Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time, Masechet Zevachim. Today is our second class and we are going to be reviewing Daf 8 through 14. And we were in the middle of talking about sacrificing sacrifices with proper intent. The word in the Gemara is lishman, which literally means like for its name. So lishman means with proper intent. Lo lishman means not proper intent. Okay, 1 second. I see my internet is a little low. Give me 1 second. I just want to fix something. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we were talking about sacrificing an animal, lishma, again, with proper intent, and we'll discuss all the ramifications, but for now we'll say proper intent means for the right sacrifice, right? So you have an animal, and it is meant for a certain sacrifice. We mentioned last week the different sacrifices that are available. If you sacrifice it for the sacrifice it was supposed to be sacrificed for, that is called lishma. Lo lishma is generally when the kohen, the priest, does not have proper intent, specifically that it's a different sacrifice, right? If it was supposed to be a burnt offering and he had in mind it to be a peace offering, right? A shelamim or an olah, right? Lo lishma means for a different sacrifice. We'll get to other improper intent at the end of today's class. So the Gemara tells us that the sin offering, the chatat, has to be done lishma, right? Again, the idea is if a chatat, a sin offering, is coming so that a person will get atonement for their sin. So then when the kohen sacrifices the animal, he better make sure that he realizes that it's a sin offering. Otherwise, the person does not get atonement. And if they do, it's not lishma, it is invalid. This is based on a verse, right? And we're going to see this a lot in this masechet. Everything is based on a verse. Right, the verse says, "V'shachat oto," he slaughtered it, right? It being with in mind that it is a sin offering, a chatat, and for him and not for somebody else. So Daf 8 now tells us that we're going to look for a source that teaches that the whole process needs to be with proper intent, right? So I mentioned last week, and we'll review it now. There are 4 major avodot, 4 actions or services that are done to an animal in order to begin and complete the sacrificial service. There are things that are beyond that are also done, but they are not essential. What is essential, right? What's called shechita, which means slaughtering the animal, kabbalah, which means receiving the blood. The third one is holacha, which means taking the blood from where the animal was slaughtered to the mizbeach, to the altar. So that's holacha, and the fourth one is called zerikah. Zerikah is zerikat hadam, sprinkling the blood on the altar. Those are the 4 essential avodot, right? Services, and if there was improper intent in one of these 4, the sacrifice is going to be invalid. Again, there are other things that are done for the sacrifice, such as burning the innards or part of the meat on the altar, pouring the rest of the blood on the bottom at the base of the altar, the kohanim eating the meat, maybe the person eating the meat. All of those things are also done, but these four are essential. And the Gemara is looking for a source that teaches that each one of the four avodot, the four services, need to be with proper intention. So the Gemara says that there are different sacrifices where the verse says you need proper intent for different actions, and then there's a verse that links all of the korbanot, all of the sacrifices together, all right? And there's a verse that says, this is the Torah, Zota Torah, le'olah, le'mincha, and it lists all of the sacrifices. And basically the way the Gemara understands it is just like the verse connects all of the sacrifices, therefore they're all linked. And then we can learn from one to the other, right? So if a verse in one sacrifice says one thing and a verse in another sacrifice says another thing, we can put those two together to learn one from the other. And therefore, the verse connects the chatat, the sin offering, to the shelamim, to the peace offering, and therefore both of them need to be done lishman, again with proper intent. If you remember, we mentioned the Pesach as well. The Pesach needs to be done in the right time, again on the 14th of Nisan. If it's done lishman, right, meaning if the Kohen realized it was a Pesach, it's valid. Lo lishman, but improper intent, invalid. However, if it's before or after Pesach, so then if you had in mind that it's going to be a Pesach, then it's actually invalid because it's not the time for Pesach. But if you had in mind that it's a shelamim or another sacrifice, then it would be valid. Okay, another drasha, extrapolation of the verses. It says that you should Zevach shlamim, right? You're going to slaughter for the sacrifice of the peace offering. And the Gemara learns that whatever the Kohen thinks about this animal, any sacrifice, if it's the wrong sacrifice, it becomes a shlamim, a peace offering. And this is learned from the principle. If you remember, we've seen this before. Klal, prat, klal, which is basically one of the 13 ways that we interpret verses in the Torah. Klal means a generalization. Prat means a more specific word, and then another klal brings it out more general. And generally, we learn a global concept from this rule. And here they're saying that basically, whatever the Kohen was thinking, if it was wrong, that animal becomes a shlamim. Then we said, so on Daf 9, it says that the Pesach, which is eaten by the owners of the animal, that is, if it was not done with proper intention, it becomes a shlamim, which is also a sacrifice that is eaten by its owners, meaning the Gemara says that because both of them are eaten by everyone, meaning not just the priests, therefore, if the Pesach is sacrificed not with proper intent, then it becomes a shlamim. And the Gemara then brings other examples. Let's say the Pesach was sacrificed for a maaser, which is the 10th animal, or for a bechor, for firstborn, or tmura, right? For a tmura is where you try to transfer the sanctity from one animal to another, or for a todah, thanksgiving. And the Gemara says no. All of these things do not work. And basically, if the Pesach is not sacrificed for a Pesach, it automatically becomes a shelamim. Okay. Then the Gemara continues on Daf 9 that if a Pesach grew up, or it became too old by Pesach, again, that animal becomes a shelamim. And there are 3 different verses that are used to learn this specific idea. So sorry. How do we get up there? Okay. And the Gemara then goes through other examples of wrong intent for the Pesach. So let's say if let's say in the desert, when the Jews lived in the desert, each nasi, each head of the tribe would bring a sacrifice, and Nachshon brought a chatat. Therefore, if a person says, I want to bring a chatat Nachshon, so then it basically means that he's bringing a chatat, and he has in mind to be like a chatat Nachshon. This would be valid. Now the Gemara moves on to the grain offering. This is called a mincha. Mincha was brought from wheat in general, sometimes barley, but mostly wheat. And it has different avodot. Again, if we talked about the 4 avodot, the 4 services of an animal sacrifice, there are also parallel services for a grain offering, for a mincha. So one of them is called kmitza. Kmitza is where you take a handful of the grain or of the flour, and then you put it into what's called a kli sharet, into a sanctified utensil, and then that is brought to the mizbeach, to the altar, and then it's put on the fire of the altar. So the Gemara tells us that if you did kmitza without proper intent, it's still valid, and it even counts for the owner. And he says that the Gemara says because the action looks different for each mincha, meaning we'll learn actually in the next masachet, minachot, that there are different types of minachot. They are either baked or fried, with oil, without oil, all different things. So because the action signifies which mincha, which sacrifice this is, so then you see which korban he was intending. But that's very different than a regular animal, which shechita, slaughtering the animal, is going to look the same for all the animals. Okay. So sorry. If you had a regular chatat, a regular sin offering, and it was brought as a what's called a chatat ola v'yored, right? We've done this before. It's a sin offering, but it's on a sliding scale. It's brought for specific transgressions. So we see that any sin offering that is brought for a sin that you would have gotten karet for. Again, karet is when a person is killed and cut off from the Jewish people. So then they're all valid. Or no, because this sin offering is variable and a regular sin offering is fixed, and therefore you cannot bring one for the other. Or the case was that he the person slaughtered the animal for someone else who was liable to bring a different sacrifice. And here the Gemara says, Teku, we're not sure what happens with that animal. Let's say that a person slaughtered the animal, did shechita with the animal, lishman, with proper intent. And then he had in mind that when he will sprinkle the blood on the altar, on the mizbeach, it's going to be lo lishma, right? With improper intent. This is invalid. Or another opinion is it's valid. And here is a fundamental idea. The Gemara says that there's a machloket, there's a difference of opinion. If you, again, we were talking about improper thought while I'm doing a certain action. What if I have an improper intent, but for the next action, right? Right now, I'm shechting this animal, I'm slaughtering the animal, and I know that it is a sin offering. But I think when I sprinkle the blood, I'm going to do it as if it's a shelamim, right? Can I think from this avodah, from this action, to another action? Does that invalidate the korban or not? And that is the machloket. Right? It's called, right, mechashvin me'avodah le'avodah. Right? I'm doing one action, but I'm thinking about another action. And this is learned from another fundamental concept, which is called pigul. Pigul is an improper thought, but a very specific one. The thought is that when I'm doing one of the avodot, let's take slaughtering the animal, shechita, I have in mind that when I eat the meat of this animal, I'm going to do it either on the wrong time, right? I'll eat the meat in 3 days. That is inappropriate. Or I'm going to eat the meat in a place where I'm not allowed to eat it, right? That's called chutz limkomo, outside of its place, or chutz lizmano, outside of its time, right? And I'll say like the severe pigul is when you think about the wrong time, and the person is actually liable for karet, as opposed to, and then he ate the meat, that person would get karet. Okay, so that is, again, called pigul. And now it is exactly what we just mentioned, right? While I'm doing one action, I'm thinking about another action. That seems to prove that it could invalidate, the sacrifice. Or the Gemara says, no, you can't ruin the sacrifice by thinking about another action that is going to happen. And that is the machloket. Daf 10. Let's say you slaughtered an animal and with the intent that the blood will be sprinkled for idolatry. So again, right, you're slaughtering the animal, but you're thinking about sprinkling the blood. So again, it's a machloket. If it's prohibited because you can't think from, right, you can think from one action to the other, or it's permissible because you cannot. And again, both of those disagreements exist. Let's say that you're slaughtering the animal and you're thinking, I'm going to slaughter this animal not in the right time. That doesn't do anything because you are literally slaughtering the animal in the right time. So that obviously does not work. Let's say you shech the animal and don't have proper intent, lo lishman. So that is invalid. So too, if you shecht the animal with bad intent for zerikah, right? The Gemara is trying to prove that I can invalidate a sacrifice if I think from this action to the next action. If you slaughtered the animal with someone else in mind, right? So the Kohen comes and he slaughters the animal. He thinks it belongs to Reuven, but really it belongs to Shimon. So one opinion is that it is valid only if the zerikah is right. However, if he did zerikah, the sprinkling of the blood for someone else, that is invalid. And that again shows that you can think from one action to another. The Torah writes that sprinkling the blood needs to be with proper intent to teach that you can't think from one action to another. Again, or another opinion is you can think from one to the other. Now, the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Eliezer says that even for an asham, now, and if you remember, the asham is a guilt offering. It's a type of sin offering. It's similar to the chatat, but it is different. It's usually brought because of a doubt, and it's brought for specific transgressions. So if it's shechted, if it's slaughtered lo lishman, meaning improper intent, it is invalid. Again, similar to the chatat, to the sin offering. Why? Again, because it's brought for a sin like a chatat. Okay, so now the Gemara says, no, wait a minute. The chatat, the sin offering, and the Pesach, it says who, it, right? It must be lishma with the proper intent, and it must also include asham. Therefore, asham needs slaughtering shechita lishma with proper intent. Or no, with asham it says who, but who isn't written for shechita, for the slaughtering. It's written by when they burn the intestines, the imurim, and not by shechita. And therefore, it's different than the chatat and the Pesach. Or, as we said before, we can link one to the other. Okay. Now, the Gemara lists many ways that the chatat is different than the asham. Again, the sin offering and the guilt offering. On one hand, they are very similar. On the other hand, there are differences. And the Gemara argues that maybe the asham is similar, but again, there are many differences. So let's say the asham, the blood is sprinkled below. There was a line about a third of the way down from the top of the mizbeach, of the altar. It was called chut hasikra. It was a line around the mizbeach, and that demarcated the upper part of the mizbeach, of the altar, and the lower part of the altar. Certain sacrifices need their blood sprinkled above, and certain need the blood below, right? And that is going to differentiate different sacrifices. So for the asham, the blood is sprinkled below, as opposed to the chatat, which is sprinkled above. Now the Gemara says, wait a minute, we haven't seen this yet, but there's also what's called a chatat ha'of, a bird sin offering, and that is sprinkled below. But again, that is a very different korban. It's a very different sacrifice. There isn't real slaughtering, shechita. Therefore, we can't learn from there. Maybe the Gemara says maybe the asham's blood could be placed above. The Gemara says no, only the chatat, the sin offering, the blood goes on top, but not for anything else. Okay. Next, daf 11. Before daf 11, Rabbi Akiva says at the bottom of 10 that any blood that enters the heichal was the sanctuary. Any blood that goes into the heichal becomes invalid, or no, only a regular chatat is invalid, or maybe also the asham. Okay. Okay. Hold on one second. From here at the top of daf 11, the Gemara is trying to compare different sacrifices, the asham to the olah. Again, the olah is the burnt offering, and are they comparable or not? And here the Gemara says that, that if both the asham and the olah are what's called kodshei kadshim, they are on a high spiritual level. They're only eaten or not eaten or only eaten by kohanim. And both of them, if the blood enters the sanctuary, then they are valid, and they are valid. But then the Gemara says, actually, no, the asham has a fixed limit, and therefore we cannot compare the asham to these other korbanot. Okay. Now we say that that again, the chatat needs to be done with proper intent. So to the asham, and from here we go to the Pesach, the korban Pesach that got too old. If you slaughtered it on the 14th of Nisan, meaning in its proper time, with the proper intent, or you slaughter other sacrifices and have intent that they are a Pesach, so this is invalid. According to Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua says actually it is valid because during the year, this sacrifice, if it was done without proper intent, it would still be valid. Therefore, other sacrifices that are slaughtered for Pesach during the year is also valid as well. Okay, the Gemara tells us that the Pesach is more stringent than the shelamim, than the peace offering, but not the other way around, because the leftover Pesach animal, right, let's say you lost it and then you found it again, it becomes a shelamim, but a leftover shelamim cannot become a Pesach. Okay, and therefore the Gemara talks about, the pasuk says, "Asher yorimu," you lift up things that are sanctified, and therefore, if you make something more sanctified, that is valid. If it is less sanctified, that would be invalid. Okay, so now if you slaughter the animal with improper intent, now it's valid, but it doesn't count for the owner. This is the term miratzeh or ritzui, right? Rotzeh means to want. So the opposite is like Hashem doesn't want this, right? It doesn't count for the person. So now, if it's for a lower korban, so then it would be invalid. But if it's for a higher korban, then it would be valid. And now there's a machloket. If it's going up in sanctity and you say that it's valid, does it count for the owner? Or maybe no, it still does not count for its owner. If the sacrifices were on the same level, so then then maybe that would be okay. And the Gemara says, no, we're actually talking about different levels. Okay, let's go to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is about the korban Pesach, and this is a good review for those of you who did Pesachim. It was a long time ago, but in Masechet Pesachim, we learned that on the 14th of Nisan, which is the day before Seder night, so that day, the korban Pesach is supposed to be slaughtered in the afternoon. We're going to see it says ben ha'arbayim, in the afternoon. We'll discuss what that means. Let's say the Mishnah tells us the Pesach was shechted, was slaughtered on the morning of Yud Daled Nisan. If you had improper intent, so then it would be valid because you didn't say that it was a Pesach. It's as if he slaughtered it the day before. Or no, maybe it is invalid because it's as if he slaughtered it in the afternoon. Again, it's the same day, Yud Daled. If you would have done it in the afternoon, it was valid. So maybe now, if you did it lo lishman, right, again, improper thought, in the morning, it would be invalid. And then Shimon ben Azai received a tradition from the Sanhedrin on the day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was appointed the head of the yeshiva, of the study hall. And what did he learn? That all sacrifices that are done lo lishma are valid, except for the Pesach and the chatat. All sacrifices that are eaten become are valid if it's lo lishma. And then we'll discuss what that means. So now the Gemara explains, if you slaughtered the Pesach in the morning, lishma, right, with the proper intent, that is valid. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute, how could it be valid? The verse says, ben ha'arbayim. Ben ha'arbayim means afternoon. Therefore, it should be invalid. And we say, no, it means, right, literally ben ha'arbayim, like ben ha'aravim, means between the two nights. So what's between two nights? An entire day, right? And therefore, the morning would also be valid. But we say, wait a minute, we have a sacrifice called the Tamid ben ha'arbayim, the afternoon daily sacrifice, the Tamid. And we know that that is given in the afternoon, not in the morning. So we say, well, no, because that's different because there is already a tamid shel shacharit in the morning. So obviously, if there's one in the morning, ben ha'arbayim has to mean the afternoon. It can't mean the morning. So then we say, oh, let's learn from other things. Maybe from the nerot, from the candles that were lit. Again, they were lit in the afternoon. What if they were lit in the morning? No. That is invalid, and we can't learn from there. What about the incense? The ktoret. Also, it's done in the afternoon, and it can't be done in the morning because it's linked to the candles. Therefore, it cannot teach us anything for this. Daf 12. Again, the tamid. It says ben ha'arbayim, and the Pesach says Erev and ben ha'arbayim, and therefore we learned that the tamid comes before the Pesach on the 14th in the afternoon. We see the same if you didn't say musaf, right, on a day where you need to say musaf. Generally, we say it after the morning service, after shacharit. However, if you forgot to say musaf on that day, and it becomes the afternoon, you actually daven mincha first, and then you daven musaf. So we see that the order is going to be changed based on the time of day. Okay, let's say you shechted this Pesach on the 13th, the day before, without proper intent, it's valid because, again, it's not time for the Pesach. If it's on the 14th, again, maybe the whole day is valid, or, as we said, only the afternoon would be valid. Okay, now we're going to learn another fundamental concept. The concept in Hebrew is called dichuy or dichuy. It literally means to push away, like lidchof. What does that mean? If something, we'll say a sacrifice, is pushed aside, meaning for whatever reason you cannot give this animal as a sacrifice right now, and then something changes and now you can give it, the question is, are you allowed to give that sacrifice? Right? Do we say that once there is dichuy, once we pushed it away, it stays pushed away, and therefore, even if now it's totally fine, you cannot bring that sacrifice? Or we say, no, it was pushed away, but now we bring it back because circumstances have changed. So the Gemara says, if we say that dichuy is a thing, and if right now I can't bring it as a sacrifice, then later when I can bring it as a sacrifice, it's invalid because I already invalidated it. So the Gemara says, well, let's say I designated my Pesach on the 14th in the morning. Now, I designated it, so now it's a Pesach, but I'm not allowed to bring it yet. So maybe that's seen as dichuy, and we push it away. And now when it comes to the afternoon, I can't bring that sacrifice. That's one scenario. And therefore, the answer would be that you would have to sanctify it only in the afternoon when it is valid to be a korban. Another question about dichuy is, does it include live animals or only once the animal was already shechted, was already slaughtered? So the Gemara brings an example. A person sanctifies his half of an animal, and then he bought the other half of the animal, and then sanctified that half. So the Gemara tells us it becomes sanctified, but you cannot bring it as a sacrifice because of dichuy, meaning when the person only owned half of the animal and sanctified that half of an animal, you cannot bring half of an animal as a sacrifice, right? There's no such thing. Therefore, there was what's called dichuy, and once it was pushed aside, now it is no longer a valid sacrifice. Another case of dichuy, let's say a person did a sin and separated his sin offering, and then became a mumar, right? Became someone who said, I don't believe in God anymore. And then they decide, oh, actually, no, now I do believe in God. So, right, can you bring that sacrifice or not? Right? So the Gemara says you cannot bring that sacrifice. It proves dichuy. Once it was invalid, now it stays invalid. Another case is a person goes insane and then comes back to normal functional life. They cannot bring that sacrifice again because of dichuy. Now the Gemara compares all of these cases, right? Maybe one of them is because you actively pushed it away, but the person who goes insane, they didn't do it on purpose, it just happened. Or maybe it's something that I can change on my own, but I can't decide when I'm going to be sane and when I'm not going to be sane. Therefore, in both of those cases, we learned that dichuy is valid and invalidates the sacrifice. Okay, let's go to the olah, right? The olah, the burnt offering. If you sacrifice it lo lishma, right? Improper intent. It is invalid, and that is learned from the chatat and the Pesach. But then the Gemara says, wait a minute, chatat and Pesach, if you do them improperly, you get karet, but an olah, you do not get karet. So how are you comparing the two? So daf 13, we say that the asham also isn't included here because it cannot be brought by the community, but all other sacrifices can be brought by the community. Okay, the next Mishnah tells us that, that the Pesach and the chatat, if they're brought with improper intent, right? Again, lo lishma, and if it was lo lishma, or the right any part of the service, what again the four actions are lo lishma, they become invalid. What about the beginning of the process is lishma, proper intent, but afterwards you do something with improper intent. So the Gemara says that is invalid. And as we said, right, it's invalid with the four services: shechita, slaughtering; kabbalah, catching the blood; holacha, bringing it to the mizbeach, to the altar; zerikah, sprinkling the blood. So Rabbi Shimon says, actually, holacha, moving it from one place to another, does not invalidate the sacrifice because you don't really need holacha. Let's say you slaughter the animal right next to the altar. So then it's right there. You just pass it to somebody else. So you don't really need holacha. If the Kohen went to a place that he isn't supposed to go and had wrong intention, it's not invalid, meaning it's valid because he wasn't in the right. If you're in the right place and you have improper intent, that's when it messes up the sacrifice. So now the Gemara explains that Kabbalah, catching the blood, is one of the four services, and you need proper intent for it. And it must be done with a valid priest in proper clothing. But that's one opinion. Another opinion is no, Kabbalah is different than zerikah, than sprinkling the blood. And if the act was done wrong, right, that's invalid. Right, means if you actually do something wrong in the action, that would invalidate the sacrifice. But if you had improper thought during that action, it is not invalidated. Okay. Next, let's go back to pigol. Again, if you remember, pigol is when you have improper thought about this sacrifice, that you are going to eat the meat at the wrong time or in the wrong place. Okay, so how does this happen? Pigol only invalidates during one of these four actions that, now it's specific actions that allow eating of the meat. So again, those four actions, but any action afterwards, like I said, burning the insides of the animal on the mizbeach, pouring out the leftover blood. If you have improper thoughts during those actions, it does not invalidate the sacrifice. Okay. If a person slaughtered the animal with intent to do Kabbalah, right, to accept the blood in the wrong time or the wrong place, that is not pigol. However, if you did Kabbalah to pour out the blood onto the mizbeach in the wrong time, that is invalid. And now the Gemara adds another aspect to pigul. We said pigul needs to be done, right? The intent or the bad thought during one of the 4 services, and it needs to be about, meaning what am I thinking about? About the eating of the sacrifice. Why I'm using air quotes? Why do I put it in air quotes? Because we're going to learn, I mean, right now, but also later on, that there are basically 2 times that the sacrifice is eaten. Once is when either the kohen or the owner of the animal eats the meat, right? That is very clearly eating. But another type of eating is when something interacts with the mizbeach, right? When you burn something. Hello? I think I lost you.
Got you back.
You were frozen.
Yeah,
Oh,
you were.
yeah.
Yeah,
My
you're back now.
computer said that I lost you. I don't know why. Okay, where did I lose you?
About a minute ago.
Okay. Did you get
On the mizbeach.
the eating of the mizbeach is also considered eating, and therefore, if someone, the kohen, had improper intent, right, pigul intent, meaning while I'm doing this action, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to eat the meat of this sacrifice at the wrong time, or I'm going to put the blood on the mizbeach at the wrong time, that is pigul. Okay, so we need both of those things. It has to be an intent during one of the 4 actions, and the intent needs to be that either I'm going to eat the sacrifice, or the mizbeach is going to eat the sacrifice, again at the wrong time. So that is pigul, and we learn it from the verse. It says eating 2 times. Therefore, it's the person eating and the altar eating. And I'll just mention, because it's almost Yom Kippur, the Gemara on Daf 13 mentions the inner chatat, right? The chatat that is brought, the sin offering that is brought into the Kodesh. And dips his finger in the blood and then sprinkles the blood, and that can create pigul. Okay, from here we go to the mincha, right? The green offering. As I said, there are 4 actions for the mincha. The first one is called kmitza. Kmitza was done by taking I say a handful, but actually it was, oh, I'm back. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why my internet's going in and out. The mincha, the grain offering, the first thing that is done is kmitza, where they would take a scoop, right? But they would, like, without their pinky or their thumb. I mean, it's a machloket, but a scoop of the flour. That is like shechita, like slaughtering the animal, right? You're taking a part of the sacrifice, then you put it in the vessel, right? This is now the Gemara is going to discuss, is it Kabbalah or not? Then you take it to the altar, and then it's called haktara, you burn it on the altar, which is like zerikah when you put the blood on the altar. So these are all essential avodot, essential actions, and they can affect pigul as well. Okay, daf 14, the last daf for today. Again, the Gemara discusses the kohen dipping his finger in the blood. We're going to see that. I really want to encourage you, those of you who it's possible for, on Yom Kippur, during Musaf, we have something called Seder HaAvodah, where we read about the service done by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. Now, after we've started this Masechet, you will see, right, that you recognize a lot of these things. Shechita, right? There's slaughtering. There's walking from one place to another. That's holacha. There's Kabbalah, getting the blood. There's zerikah, right? Dipping his finger in the blood and sprinkling. All of these themes are brought on Yom Kippur. So again, for me, it's very meaningful, and for all of us, it's going to be meaningful because we just learned about it. The Gemara now on 14 talks about, as we mentioned, wrong time and wrong place. Wrong time is pigul, and the person will get karet, but wrong place, meaning I'm going to eat right? I can't wait to have my barbecue in Alon Shvut, right? That is in the wrong place, and therefore that is problematic. But it only invalidates the sacrifice. It does not make it pigul. And then there's a machloket about this space. Here, I'll just show you a picture, because I think pictures are always good. Where's that picture? Hold on. Let's see if you see. Okay. Hopefully you can see this picture. If you can see, this is an aerial view from different angles. So, I mean, it's the same angle, but basically, you have on the bottom right, you have the what's called the ulam and the hechal. That is the building of the Beit HaMikdash. Right in the hechal is where you have the golden altar and the candelabra, the menorah, and the shulchan, the table. In Kodesh HaKodeshim, in the small room on top, further in is the aron, is the ark, and then outside of the building is the altar. Now we will learn, we haven't learned yet, but we will learn that most sacrifices need to be slaughtered on the north. Again, north is to the right, the north side of the altar. And then the question is, if you look at the top left picture, right, the north side of the altar is B. Right? Everyone agrees that B is the north side. And the question is, what about A? Right? A is between the north side and the ulam. And that's the machloket, is that area considered north, because it's still north of the altar, but it's not exactly north of the altar, and therefore there is a machloket. And that is on daf 14. Okay. Hold on 1 minute. At the bottom of daf 14, we have a discussion about who needs to do each one of these actions. So we learn that shechita, slaughtering, can be done by what's called a zar. Zar literally means stranger, but in Masechet Zevachim, zar means a non-kohen. So a non-kohen, meaning a man, a woman, can do shechita, can slaughter the animal, but from Kabbalah, from accepting the blood and on, it must be done by a kohen. And then at the end of the daf, it talks about can the Kohanim pass the blood from one to the other without actually walking? And the Gemara actually says that it is okay, though some say it's invalid if it's handed to the wrong person. Okay, with that, we are going to stop here. If anybody, we have 2 minutes, so if anybody has any questions about the many things that we just discussed. Yes.
What did you mean when you said that the mizbeach eats the korban, the sacrifice? What do you mean the mizbeach eats it?
Okay, so we're going to see later on in the Masechet. We don't see it here, but so again, the statement in the Gemara was any action that has to do with eating is part of the pigul, right? Improper intention.
Right.
So we know that eating is when you eat the meat.
Right. Hello? Gosh.
Frozen.
Yeah. Just having lots of problems today.
It was a good question.
We lost you, Rabbanit.
Yeah. I wonder if she can hear us. You're on mute.
She got through the whole class.
Yeah.
So
I'm back.
Mm.
I'm going to wish everyone a meaningful fast, successful
you.
fast, and that you would all
Thank
be sealed
you.
for a good new year.
Thank
Amen.
you.
Looking
Me
forward
too.
to seeing you again soon. Be safe.
Thank you. Me
Thank
too.
you.
Kamar Katima Tova.
Thank you. Take
A safe and healthy year.
Okay. Okay, we are back. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on today. Yes, so I think the universe doesn't want me to explain this. The idea is that we'll learn it later on in the Masechet, but basically, what's a korban, right? A korban is when right, we are connecting to God. So the Masechet is going to teach that basically God, right, when we bring a korban to God, God eats the korban. Now, again, anthropomorphically. Therefore, anything that goes onto the mizbeach.
Just lost you again.
Right, that's the idea. And any action where something goes onto the mizbeach is seen as the mizbeach is eating it.
It's like being consumed, you mean? It's being consumed?
Correct.
Okay.
Consumed, that's a great word. Consumed, yes, much better. Yes.
Okay. So the eating is too anthropomorphic.
Okay, great, much better. Consumed, I like that better.
Okay.
Excellent. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. My pleasure.
Gemar Chatima Tova.
Gemar Chatima Tova. Next week, same time, same place, hopefully with good internet. All right, Gemar Chatima Tova, everyone.
Gemar Chatima
Good
Tova.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Beautifully done. Beautifully done.
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Nira?
Yeah.